This game features a savage attack from Hans Niemann. It was played in round 6 of the US Championships. Let's have a look at what happened here.
I get stopped often and asked about beats.
Sorry about that, wrong clip. So Hans kicks off here with pawn to d4. We had knight f6 in response, c4, e6, all very normal, right? But here Hans goes for bishop to f4. Very offbeat move. We normally see one of these knights developing in that position. And now d5 was played, the principled strike in the centre, and Hans continues to play provocatively here. He still doesn't develop one of his knights. He takes on d5, the knight recaptures, and he drops back this bishop. It was attacked on that square, and there is a Magnus Carlsen game from this position against Wesley So, by the way. So Hans really prepares and studies hard. Now we had this pawn coming to c5, striking at the centre. Hans goes e4, kicks that knight, and now already white has some problems defending this centre. Both pawns are attacked. So knight d2 was played, giving black this pawn if Ray Robson wanted to take it here, but he didn't do that. I guess he was a bit scared of walking into Hans' preparation. Then e5 would come, the knight gets kicked, you carry on developing. White can build up quite a quick attack using this pawn as a bit of a thorn in the black side, and maybe you win this one back later in the day. So Ray didn't want any of that. He just carried on developing pieces. This pawn now took on c5, the bishop recaptured, e5 kicked this knight, it found a nice square on d5, and Hans carries on developing here. So although he's kicked this knight into a nice square on d5, he wants to use this pawn as a kind of attacking wedge later in the game. So castles was played, now pawn a3. You want to cover this square from all of these knight jumps, prepare to develop your bishop to d3. b6 now prepares to develop this light squared bishop. Knight to e4, hits this one here, and Ray just carries on with his pawn push here, preparing to go bishop to a6, and actually letting Hans take if he wants to do so. Now I won't go down that line, because rook c1 was played. We now had knight c to e7 coming away from this x-ray, and still we don't see this bishop move. And so Hans could have actually won a clean pawn here if he wanted to take it. But the reason he didn't do this is because it kind of fizzles out the attack somewhat. Ray Robson was talking about the fact he'd have likely gone queen to b6. The rook retreats, something like bishop a6. You could also go rook d8 there, knight f5. But say these bishops come off, what else to do? That's the best move. Castles, knight f5. And in this position, you've got these two good knights, plus a lot of pressure on the b pawn. You can't go b4 very easily, so there should be enough compensation. At some point, black should win back that pawn. Not too scary. So that's why Hans didn't take the bishop. He goes bishop d3. He wants to keep pieces on the board, tactics alive. Now we had bishop a6. These ones got exchanged. The rook recaptures. Now the king castles, and this next move's very interesting from Ray. He could start with knight f5, for example, but he goes queen to a8, activating the queen onto this diagonal, looking at that undefended knight. It was defended by the rook now. Knight f5 played, and now Hans already shows his very aggressive attacking ideas here. So he goes knight to h4, opening this queen. He really wants to go after the black king here. So the knight captured on g3, pawn recaptures. Now this bishop dropped back to e7, so prepares to add some defense around the king. It covers g5 from a knight jump, for example, and it opens the c file now so that that one can be challenged. Queen h5 now from Hans. He's really going for it. b5 played by Ray, so he's preparing to activate this rook back into the game. Knight f3 hops back, looking to come here maybe in future, possibly into d4. Rook c6 challenged the file, and now here Hans really shows his intent. So you could kind of keep a lid on things here with knight to d4. The line could go something like this. You take control of the file, black can save this pawn, prepare to go rook c8 soon, but the problem here is it's getting quite drawish, you're exchanging pieces. So what Hans does is this one coming across to the d file, he cedes the file, lets the rook invade, but this now allows him to turn his attention to the king side. So this pawn is attacked. Hans just takes a time out to save it for a moment. And now we'll see this rook just going on a munching spree. Looks so dangerous to lose that time, but a lot of the other black pieces are actually optimally placed at the moment. For example, if you tried to double on the file, well, now the knight jumps in and you hit two weaknesses, so h6 is no good, you're dropping here. So that rook has to stay where it is. This one comes to a2, going after this pawn, and now Hans just goes for it. Knight d4, the rook captures here, and pawn f4. So he wants to go f5, f6, blast open this king. But Ray shuffles back with the rook. He's got ideas here with the queen and the rook converging on g2. f5 now from Hans, very direct. And now knight c3 from Ray. Excellent counter-attacking move just in time. Hits this rook, hits this knight. And so what does Hans do? Ignore both, carry on with the savage attack, pawn to f6. And black only has one move in the position here to stay ahead, stay with the advantage. Can you find it if you want to pause? What would you do if you were coming under fire like this? So the move to play here is bishop takes on f6. That's the key. Now just to show you why pawn takes is no good, well then the pawn recaptures. Now if the bishop takes, we capture with the knight with check. This is key. And now there's no time to deliver this mate down here because the other knight jumps in with check. You give an entire knight here, but then you checkmate the king like this. Drive it out into the open. You can even give up a second rook, well, second piece rather, first rook, and then you mate on f4. Beautiful geometry. So those are the problems if you try and capture with the pawn here. What else to do? Well, there's not so much else. The bishop's attacked, then the rook's coming. So the bishop captured. Now we had retakes with check. Pawn recaptured. And now it looks so scary to go queen g4 check. But after the king moves, pawn takes. What's the follow-up? Because after the rook blocks the mate, well, there's nothing to do but move the queen and then black's counter-attacking. So we didn't have the check played by Neiman. He goes knight f3 to block that queen from checkmating here. Now this knight took on d1. The pawn took here. Again, you're threatening mate in 2. So king h8 played, prepares to bring the rook. This rook now recaptured the piece. Now rook g8, anticipating the queen's attack. So king h2 from Hans, he's got nothing better but to try and do something about his king safety. And now queen e4, centralizes, prepares queen g4 if white's not careful. So Hans desperately goes for this counter-attacking move. Rook d7, take here, then give checkmate is the kind of idea. But queen e2 is now played. Hans is getting mated first if he doesn't react. So the queen comes back. And now this queen took on f3, picks up that piece, using the pin against the pawn. Hans takes here, a last desperate attempt, threatening mate, but now a beautiful finishing move from black. Again, if you want to pause, look for the best move, please do so. So the black rook crashes through on g2. If you come back here, you get checkmated, and if you take with the queen, well then we check here. If the king goes or the queen blocks, doesn't matter, we pick up a whole rook, black's a rook ahead, the game is done. So after this move here of rook takes on g2, Hans Niemann resigned. If you want to see another exceptional game between Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen, then do check out the video on screen. Hit that subscribe button if you never want to miss a future video, and thanks very much for watching. See you soon.